Hello everyone and welcome to the Community Corner, where we take your questions and we try to answer them the best that we can. Like to have a lot of fun. My name is KL Smith, joined here by Nathan Mooney, the man, the myth, the legend, the meme lord, the one and only,
just here, dude.
The one true king.
That's true, the one
himself.
true king. That's true. I like all these titles. I like to think that you're adding one on every time and that it just gets more and more prolific.
Yes. And then next to him, the one true hero designer of them all.
A little hyperbolic, would you say? Minorly hyperbolic.
The one true lead hero designer named Cameron
Winston.
Yeah, the one true me, I guess. Sure. So, but can we ask the important question?
Yeah.
So today we have a fashion statement, and I have to call it out. Mooney, the chain you're wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the chain is new.
So the chain's new. I ran home at lunch and I was like, I need to get a chain because I feel like the chain really ties the whole ensemble together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? I have to admit, guys, I'm really liking the way you're looking today. It's pretty sharp.
I mean, no, yeah. Honestly,
quite dapper.
Yeah. Fashion-wise, you guys are definitely saying something right now.
I was actually going to say the same for you two.
Wow, that's
it's
very
quite
flattering.
dapper, gentlemen.
Oh wow, that's
appreciate it.
Wow, that's awesome. That's
So-
fantastic.
So last week we talked a little bit about some of the issues that we had with V43. Came out, had some instability issues, released a patch, had more instability issues, and then we released another patch, and now we're starting to get back in line with where we were prior to the V42 release. We had another patch that came out yesterday that was another crash-related patch that hopefully address some issues that people have been experiencing. Now, we are currently still investigating as many issues as we can that will that we're trying to at least get in line with where we were prior to the release of V43 and all the awesome visuals. There's things like FPS frame rate that we're looking into. There's memory issues, crashes, a number of issues that we're trying to get back on parity. Not far from where we were now, but we are continuing to phone home and really dial in on some of these issues. So hopefully over the next couple weeks, we will start getting to a place where things are running a lot smoother. If you guys are running into any crashes or bugs, please, as always, report them on the forums, report them to player support. Hit me or Mooney up, anybody that you can get in touch with, and we try to get those to our engineers as quickly as possible. So again, we're trying to, as quickly as we can, work through all of these stability issues that have happened here recently. Now, next week, we will have a balance update to a few different items, not a huge update for 43.2. We will include some things that were going to be in 43.1 into 43.2, and we have a couple balance updates to some cards. One of them, which is Unstable Cyborg, which has been at least popular point of discussion. And you know, it's one of those things where we talk a lot about balancing, and we'll probably have Colin Fogel, who's one of the designers who works on a lot on cards, competitive designer, so that he can kind of talk through some of the changes that we make to cards. Now, in 43.3, we will have some additional changes to a wide range of cards and probably a couple hero adjustments as well that kind of go in line with now we're balancing almost every 3 weeks now with major balance passes across the board in terms of trying to get things in line and make things better for quality of life. But talking a little bit on Unstable Cyborg, I think we're going to bring it down a little bit next week with some damage. But this is one of the things that, you know, we took a little snippet, and I'm just kind of reading some of this information from Colin, but I want to kind of ask you, Cameron, what makes it so hard for us to quickly make these changes and then kind of assess it?
So like, the thing with balance changes is like, let's say like, you know, patch comes out Tuesday, and you know, you want to see what the community is doing about it, right? And then let's say you get your data, and like, you don't want to just get like 1 day of data, right? You want like 2 or 3 or 4. By the time you get the data you need, it's like, let's say it's 2 or 3 days later, and you decide, okay, well, based on this data, I should make a change. Then you have to implement the change, and then you got to test the change, and then you got to like make sure the change is okay. And then, you know, let's say the first one didn't hit it what you want, and you had to do it again. So it could take like a week and a half to like turn around a change,
right? To
actually get it to a point where we've tested it and it's okay. So at that point, then you're like, well, you can't always just ship a change. Like some changes, some numbers, you know, can change in the backend and some can't. And it has to do with client server stuff. So like if we push out a backend update and we could say, okay, like this missile that did 300 damage now does 350 damage, right?
Yeah.
But if we do, like, let's say, you know, we say we're going to change the range of this ability. Range is also in the client. And if we don't patch the client, then like we can't change the range of the ability because the server can say, yeah, you can shoot this 2,000 units, but the client is saying, nah, it's only 1,200. Then it won't let you confirm the ability in the extra 800 range.
Right.
So there's a lot of that goes on, and it's really a case by case kind of thing, which has to do with like what the numbers are. But the thing which is interesting is also, so looking at like Unstable Cyborg, and I'm just going to like read from a little bit of this so we're going to have Colin on next week. He's going to talk about this at depth, but just from the stuff, like we looked at a lot of the data. This is like by the numbers. So we said Unstable Cyborg is featured in 1.5% of non-starter decks, which translates to 0.75% of overall decks, and it's currently ranked 19th in popularity.
0.75%.
Yeah, 0.75%. And if you assume that each player has an equal likelihood of equipping it, then that means that a single Unstable Cyborg will be present in about 7.5% of PvP matches worldwide. And if you said 100% of players at the 1600 plus MMR rating used custom decks, an Unstable Cyborg would be present in 19% of these matches. So essentially, 1 out of 5 matches at even the 1600 plus, assuming that literally everyone is making a custom deck and no one's using a starter deck. And then the last piece of information is that the card is only in hand for 25 to 30% of an average match, which means that on average between 60 and 70% of a match. So 20%, if you're in the 1600 plus MMR band range, what we're saying is the data shows that 20% of your games will have one. On average. And in that game, 70% of the game, it will not be equipped.
Yep.
Right.
So
these
like
are some of the challenges, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, do we make a change, right? Like we see a lot of people talking
It's
about
understanding perception versus
Yeah.
the actual
but
use and reality.
we look
of
at
the
the
card.
data and we say, we crunch the numbers and we say, okay, well, how many people is this affecting? Because that's what we do. So we look at the game feedback. Okay, is this aligning with what the players are saying? Okay, we check places like Reddit. We check places like our forum. We talk to some of the high MMR players. We talk to these folks, and then we go back to the design team. We say, hey, this is what the community has been telling us. What changes can we make, or what's the steps to do this?
And to be clear, like the argument is not like, well, not a lot of people use it, so we shouldn't change it. The argument is just essentially just a lot of there's two things. It's like A, it's overpowered and we're nerfing it, so like that's happening. But B, it's like the perception that it's like ubiquitous and it's in every game, and if you don't run it, you're wrong and stuff like that is actually only affecting a very small percentage. And I guess if you're in that percentage, you may feel like it's in every game, but like our numbers aren't bearing that out. Like our data is not bearing that out.
Right. So again, it's being changed, but we wanted to kind of present more information to you guys about, at least when it comes to data, how we look at this stuff in tandem with feedback. Because we take it all in and we pass it along on a weekly basis. So we have every Tuesday, the community team sits down and we just grill this guy and the design team. And we're like, hey, we need this to happen, Cameron.
Yeah.
Hey, Cameron, we need this to happen too.
Yep, and I'm solely responsible for literally every decision that goes in the game, right? And no, which isn't even close to being true. So like, yeah, we talk about essentially what we're doing in design and why we're doing the things, and we're like, hey, you know, sorry, we can't necessarily do that, or there's other things at play for that, or we're waiting on this, or there's some technical problem with that.
And it allows us to get more of an understanding as to where things are and like how that process works, like week to week, or what cadence that looks at, like looking at the data, seeing how that affects, how many people it affects, who are we going to touch with this, how many like rungs down the ladder is that going to hit.
Right. And then what we try to do is when we come out of those design meetings, we get like a high list of items. It's like, okay, these are the things that we can come back and tell the community. It's like, okay, we're going to be addressing this week, or hey, don't have a solution for this, but we are going to address this at this point in time.
Yeah.
And all the time we try to be as straightforward as we can. So getting directly to questions from the community, we took questions this time from YouTube. So if you have questions, guys, whether it be Reddit, whether it be forums, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Facebook or YouTube, Twitch, wherever, ask them, leave them in the comment section, wherever, tweet them to us.
Send me a Telegram.
This is from the Anti-Social Experiment. I would like to know the mindset on releasing skins. Why is the order so random when they come and when they come out? So there's a couple of things. We don't have Jordan on to talk in depth about skin creation, or even Jason Glatz can talk a little bit from a production side on how we do skins. But our production pipeline for creating skins is incredibly taxing on the team in general. So very early on, when we were first releasing skins, we were doing it so that we could understand what our pipeline was. So, you know, there was a lot of skins for like Steel and Twin Blast, I think, early on. And that was the team trying to figure out the process of, okay, this is how we create skins. And over time, what we've done is we've mapped out how long each mesh or each hero takes to create a skin, as we've done one for each hero. And so each of them are on their own separate timeline, because some of them take a lot longer than others. And again, our game is at a fidelity standpoint. When you compare it to others in the space, it takes us quite a bit longer because of the quality of our game to create skins at a rapid pace. So we have to schedule them out in a pace that doesn't kill the team, but also delivers on quality. Right. So, you know, over time, you guys will see more skins for more heroes, but again, you have to understand that they're on different schedules. And some heroes, based on their meshes, they're easier to create in a faster manner. Now, that being said, if we go up to a higher skin where it takes effects and we change around the base design of the skin, I'm going to use Summertime Twin Blast as my...
Or Summer Blast, honestly. I'm actually okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, so, I mean, he effects changed on that. He had a brand new outfit. By the way, guess what, guys?
Guess what?
You know, I'm not even going to tell him. I'm just going to show up. It was a surprise. It's going to be a surprise.
No, I know
I
what
don't
you're
want to
say.
spoil
No,
it.
this is good.
He doesn't even know.
I don't even know.
I know.
I'm not. You know.
No, I got you. Yeah, I got you.
Know?
No, you wear it. Wear it. Just
I'm
going
to wear it.
Just wear it. Yeah,
okay.
Don't even tell him.
Okay. I'm going to wear it, guys.
He's going to wear it.
He's going to wear it.
So that's, hopefully that answers the question. But basically, each of our skins are on a different timeline based on a different hero mesh, and they all take a certain amount of time
and some may feel a little bit more random, and some may feel more planned. Like, for example, we've had like the Shadow's Eve like skins in the past, and we've had like the winter skins as well.
Shadow's Eve is just around the corner.
Oh, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Shadow's Eve.
What are you going as?
I was thinking of going as The Rock, but now that I've done this, I don't really know if I can run that back. So
nice.
I might go something else. Figure it out.
Cool.
All right, Cameron, this is for you.
Yeah.
This is from Aaron Gary.
Okay.
Can you inform us as to why you buffed Kwang, who was already a really strong hero?
Okay, so like, this is one of the things. One of the things we've been doing is making usability passes. Like when we make these large sort of sweeping balance adjustments to the game, like with 42 and like the game's faster now, like people have different move speed and stuff like that. We wanted to be more responsive, like stuff like, for example, with Aurora, it's like we wanted to update the intent of the abilities to be a little bit more responsive and a little bit help people, you know, with the quality of life stuff. So we didn't intend, the goal was not to buff Kwang. The goal was to make his abilities more usable. I mean, if you think about like what it was like to hit someone with a tether on Legacy, which many of you maybe never even played, like that was the intent of it. You know, it wasn't like this crazy skill shot that was impossible to land. It was like pretty reasonable because, you know, yeah, it's a skill shot, but it's not like
a solid read and you were good to go.
Yeah, solid read, you were good to go because people were moving so slow. Like, remember, people don't even remember our move speeds right now are between like the 680, 720 range. Used to be like 370.
370. Yeah, that's
like that was what it used to be. Like, used to be moving almost more than half as slow as you are right now, and that's when Kwang's AOE was made. So, like, yeah, it makes it a little bit easier to hit with, which is a good thing. Like, we want it to be a little bit easier to hit with because we've updated our game to a factor of twice the speed, and we never adjusted a lot of these things. Secondly, it's not exactly a nerf. It's sort of like I said, it's sort of a sidewave buff. Like, yeah, it's easier to hit people with it, but also they get more room to move because the AOE is bigger. So even though you're tethered, like before, like you're more constrained in what you could do.
Right.
Now you're like tethered, but there's a lot more of a room to move around. But yeah, absolutely. I would say expect more of these kinds of changes. Like more things of like, we're going to be updating reticles to make them a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to hit with because the game got faster and we didn't adjust a lot of these things.
And for what it's worth, with a lot of these changes that come in, like the usability changes, like feeling better about playing the hero, people who are good at that hero they may just get, you may see them find more success in that hero because of those usability changes. But the folks who are still out here learning Kwang, like, it's still very valuable to put in the time and like understand the hero, because these aren't changes that are magically actually just going to buff the character for you. They're going to buff the way you can play the character, the potential you can get to, rather than just being like, oh, Kwang does 9 million damage with his ultimate now. Like, that's actually something where it's like, okay, that's, everybody's just going to be able to ult and kill anybody. But in the scenario where I'm using Kwang and I have to land the tether to begin with, then do everything else, it's still like that executional barrier.
So here's an interesting tidbit for you, back in the by the numbers thing. So we saw a spike in Kwang's win rate and a reduction in Grux's win rate in this patch. And the team's been investigating it. We're still investigating why, but obviously no real changes to Grux. So we're like, well, we didn't understand that at all. Then we started looking at Kwang, and we thought, okay, well, maybe what it means is like players in low MMR brackets are now doing better because we made it easier to use. But that's not what we saw. We saw universally across all MMR bands, everyone's winning more with Kwang. And we're like, but we didn't, like, is it like, I mean, it's the same damage, it's the same effective. So essentially, all we did with the hero is, if you were missing before a few times, now you're actually going to hit a little bit more often. And that change alone was, you know, so the thing about it to me is like, it would make sense to me if we're like, okay, look, you know, people with lower skill bands that weren't hitting it are now hitting it, and now they're doing better. That would make sense. But the players in the higher skill bands, you'd expect, you know, it wasn't exactly the world's hardest skill shot to hit in beforehand, right? So I would expect 1,600 plus players probably able to hit it pretty reliably before the change. Their win rate went up. So to me, it's like what I mean, it's just a lot of unanswered questions of that. But don't worry, we're looking at Kwang balance-wise. We're looking at Feng Mao. We're looking at a lot of these heroes. So you're going to see a bunch of those changes soon. But essentially, the answer to this question is the goal was not to buff him. The goal was to bring a lot of the usability in line. And if it turns out that he's too good, we can change his numbers, but the usability needs to feel good. Like, that's the most important thing. Part, if the heroes, like, if we are bouncing around assuming like how hard something is to use, and it's just, the reality is it's harder to use.
We can make the metaphorical sword smaller, bigger, sharper, more blunt, but if the sword doesn't feel good to hold,
then the hero's not fun to play.
I like that.
That also works because
I can smell what you're cooking.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Nice. What is he cooking?
Swords.
Do we want to answer the other question?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, we missed it.
This is a combination of two questions, and I'll just go out.
We're going to read them both.
This is from Manuel Menendez, and this kind of goes into some of the things that I've talked about previously that makes it difficult for us to hop into feedback discussions, because players generally have such different levels of game knowledge and understanding and mechanical skill, so that when they talk about different heroes or different parts of the game, they present different
perspectives.
Very different perspectives. So Manuel Menendez says it's nearly impossible to out-tank the damage, even if you're far ahead. Can we get economy dumps for tankiness, power tap for HP, and both armors? And then from Jay Dobbs, he says, fix balancing. All you need to win is 4 tanks and a support. So this is some of the feedback that we'll present to Cameron, and Cameron will go,
yeah, it's like, so
what do you want me to,
like, it's like, it's literally these two questions are actually perfect, because if you look at them together, this is essentially like the task of being a game designer in like in a space where you're like triaging live
solving
feedback.
For a problem.
You're getting from both ends, is like those two things. Obviously tanks need more tankiness to survive because they're just dying, but also they're all you need to win. You just be tanks so you can be tanky. So either one of those two people is totally wrong, or the truth is probably it's how you look at it. And that's why we go back to like data and stuff like that. So first off, a couple giant like high level philosophies. It is always better, and I've talked about this before, when you're choosing between offense and defense, to bias towards offense. Because defense makes the game slow, ponderous, and boring. Like, essentially, if you look at it as like a 50-50 split, and if I spend 100 gold on offense and you spend 100 gold on defense, if we're exactly the same, the game kind of stagnates. What you want is 100 points of offense is like 51%, and 100 points of defense is like 49%. Right. Because what happens is you slightly bias, because offense is is sort of a creationary play style, whereas defense is a reactionary play style. And the more reactionary the play style gets, the more passive it becomes, and the more slow it becomes, and the longer games get, and the more like sort of like, well, there's no action in your
If
action
everyone's
game.
reacting, nobody's acting.
Yeah. So offense. So we always slightly bias towards offense. That being said, our data doesn't show that like tanks are sort of like dominating the game right now. We do definitely have adjustments coming, but it's like we're trying to say that I think there's a good balance between, yes, some tanks are probably tuned too high, and also some tanks are probably not tuned well enough.
Right.
But like if you're running a tank and you're expecting to like 1v4 someone and survive, like there's no amount of money that's going to let you survive that. If you think about it in terms of like the game has to be balanced assuming 2 people are fighting. Because in a world where you balance the game assuming I should be able to tank 4 people, if you're fighting 1 person, that person has no shot.
Right.
So it's like you might as well be shooting like an invulnerable wall. So you have to balance people assuming that they're fighting one-on-ones, and then like maybe if the tank gets really advanced and has great cards, has higher levels or special abilities or mobility in some kind of ways, you might be able to tank 2 people, 3 people, but not even the best tank in the game is just going to sit down and just like be like, I'm going to 1v5 casually. Like, will you 1v5 after being 4 levels up on people with 5,000 extra gold? Maybe. Anyone can do that if you have the right build and you're the good enough player. But like the idea, the narrative that I read a lot is like, well, I picked Rampage or Steel or Feng Mao, and I bought like these 4 cards, and I have Unstable Cyborg in my deck, so I instantly win. And then like I 1v5 the team, and we're all level 11. Like that doesn't happen. Like that's not reality. Like what the reality is in that clip, the crazy clip you see, it's always like, here's this 58-minute game where we could have won 25 minutes ago, but instead I spent 25,000 gold on power taps, and I got red zone, and I stood next to all my buddies, and here's this 14-second YouTube GIF clip of me doing 14,000 damage with an attack, and hoi nerf this hero. Like that's like, you get a lot of that. Or you get like, here's this clip of me 1v5ing a Feng Mao without the HUD, which would show you that I'm level 20 and everyone else is level 13. Like those are the things that like is usually left out of these clips that really give context and color to them.
Right. One thing that I wanted to add to this, and if I look back, and this is just from a feedback standpoint, when the community team takes feedback, we do kind of like by release. So we'll have like the 42 release, 43 release, and what we do is we try to thematically put some other popular feedback that you guys submit, and then present that to the team at Broad, not just the design team, but the artists, the entire team. We put it out in these reports. If I look back at my 42 feedback, the very first gut reaction that people had was, damage is too much, damage is too high, I don't have time to react. And slowly, as people have learned more about the card system and we've made adjustments, now we're seeing, man, it's starting to pick up. Oh man, it's a little too tanky. It doesn't feel right. The fights are too long. So it's interesting if I look back at feedback from 42 to 42.3 to 43, just kind of seeing what was popular during that 42 to the changes in 42.3, and then how we've kind of presented that to the teams. But it just goes into it's tough, right? And you know, the fact that we have both Manuel and J Dobbs saying 2 opposite things makes it very apparent that, you know, balancing is not one-to-one, right? No. Like you're just not gonna to get it right. And so we constantly are trying to, you know, do the best that we can, one, but also look at information that you guys are sending us, feedback that you guys are sending us, and try to present it in a way that's like, hey, how does this match up with what we're seeing in the game, so that we can give you guys the best experience. And ultimately, like any game that's a competitive multiplayer game that I've ever played ever as a player, and both now as working in the industry, man, people say, you know, complete opposite things at times, and it makes it really rough.
And there's like a constant ebb and flow. At any one point, you're taking like a snapshot of what people are feeling at that moment, and then at that point, it could be a different opinion the next day. Yeah.
So I mean, we definitely we've seen and continue to see emergent gameplay that happen from the, hey, I'm learning a new card system, and then 3 weeks later, hey, these auras are stacking, and then we have the aura stacking, and then 3 weeks later, it's like, hey, now we got Unstable Cyborg, and that started to pick up at the end of the ore stacking.
Yeah, it's like, hey,
stuff.
this is the optimal build, and it's like,
it's
oh,
just
is that
interesting to me, and I mean, I really find a lot of joy in it, and just seeing how the community is starting to learn how to play and pick things up, and all of a sudden, you guys are creating these types of metas that end up being things that we kind of look at and evaluate and figure out how we have to adjust it.
And the thing is, like I said, we're not trying to design to the meta, right? We're not going like, oh, it's tank meta, so let's do this thing. Like, we're just trying to like make the game as balanced as we can based on, you know, and of course it doesn't mean like we don't look at what the community is doing and go, well, I mean, even if like let's say we have hero A and hero B, and let's say hero B nobody figured it out, but hero A everyone figured it out and now they're winning. And it's like we're waiting for the day. The joke on the balance team is we're waiting for the day that people discover that Crunch is a beatdown. Like he's like super powerful, right? And one of these days, the community is going to go like figure out like how to just wreck people with Crunch, and we're gonna have to come in and nerf him totally.
And it happened with things like Sevarog, for example. Like I think for the longest time, people kind of doubted Sevarog and didn't really find a lot of value. And then we saw a lot of competitive players picking him up.
Leo.
Yeah, and a lot, and it's like, and a lot of these players, like you kind of saw that, and you're just like, oh wow, he can really do some work. And then more and more people started picking him up. So it's that sort of thing also where you have that back and forth of like getting it, like seeing it actually happen, then believing it, trying it for yourself, and being like, okay, so I can try this. I'm gonna tell my friend about it. He'll tell his friend, and then
it's like, or you get to a point where like you buff a hero until like people notice him, and then you're like, oh, the hero's been noticed, like 63% win rate. Then you got to bring it back slow.
Yeah. And the funny thing to me, and this is just talking more on a kind of like a competitive level. Back when I competed, and one of the guys here was what we were playing. It's always interesting to me to see how many people in the community take the time and effort in a competitive environment to really go to great lengths to test the boundaries of the system. I'm curious right now from a competitive standpoint, how many people go, this is status quo, let me just figure out status quo, versus the people that go, how can I figure out how to manipulate this in a way that I'm not only am I going to break the status quo, but then I have the new status quo. And I don't know how much of that is happening right now in the community where they're saying, how do I one up this versus just saying this is just status. This is how it is.
Am I going to generally win more using this deck? Awesome, I'll just keep using this one versus like, oh, this is a risky deck and I could lose this game, but or I could win it I could insanely win this hard.
And that's the things that I'm really starting to keen in on from community members in the game is how far are people experimenting? How far are they going with team comps? How far are they really trying to push the boundaries of the system inside of an environment where 5 versus 5 is optimal and all teams have team comms and you know it's the highest level that you can possibly play the game. Those are the things that are really starting to fascinate me, and seeing who's going to be the leader in that space when it comes to some of the teams that are consistently playing right
push
now.
the boundaries of your gameplay the way I'm pushing the boundaries of this outfit.
I think I would say that you're breaking. You're breaking new ground. Breaking new ground.
You guys will get there.
Oh man! All right. Well, if you guys have more questions, please be sure to leave them down in the comment section. We will try to include them in next week's Community Corner. Again, we hope you guys enjoyed today's discussion. We try to be as candid as we can and tell you guys generally our philosophies about how we approach the game. Till the next time, folks. We'll see ya.
Take care.